I now recognize the gentleman from South Carolina.
Move to strike the last word.
The gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I was going to respond. You said that this was not, Mr. Goldman, this was not politically motivated, but we know that to be the case. In fact, you live in the jurisdiction of Alvin Bragg. You campaigned with Alvin Bragg, who campaiggned on going after Donald Trump.
False.
So
He never campaigned on going after Donald Trump.
To say
the gentleman
that this
from
was
South
not
Carolina
politically motivated is not based in reality. This absolutely was. There was coordination with the Biden DOJ. That was both in the Georgia case and the New York case. And so to say that it wasn't and that we're just making it up really kind of goes against the overwhelming evidence to suggest that that's exactly what they were doing to begin with.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
With that, I yield back to the chair.
Would the gentleman yield for a question?
No.
To me.
To you, Mr. Chairman, of course.
So many questions, so little time. So there were a few things said, and I want to understand so that everyone understands. Currently, a federal judge whose a similar event occurs would be removed to federal court. Is that correct?
Correct.
And if there's ever been a friendly venue, it would be for a federal judge in a federal court. And yet that's been the law for a long time, right?
Correct.
And currently, if it were you or any of the gentlemen on the other side, it could be removed to federal court in many cases.
Correct. And again, it's not a mandate. It's an option that you could remove. And so it is up to the defendant in a civil or criminal case to take that option to remove.
And for those who haven't practiced in federal court, it is not uncommon for federal judges to be overseeing cases that include state causes.
Would the
correct?
gentleman yield?
For sure, yes.
Okay, so there's nothing unusual here. It applies to other federal offices.
Issa yield?
Just one second. We're extending it only to the president. Let me go through a couple of pieces of history, though, if I could, and ask you questions. President Obama ordered and struck an American citizen on foreign soil and killed him. You remember that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Terrorist, but he wasn't currently shooting at us or anything like that. He was tried, I guess, in the international court, but we didn't recognize that. Nobody, picked a state where this terrorist was from and tried to prosecute the president. But if they did, without this law, isn't it conceivable that it wouldn't be removed to federal court and you could have a venue that somehow would think they could try the president for his official acts?
That's exactly right.
And the gentleman was referring, I think the ranking member was referring to this idea of dismissal. Is there anything here that dismisses cases that is not consistent with the U.S. Constitution based on, or with the decision of the Supreme Court?
No, I think that goes beyond the bounds of the legislation. This is just a removal mechanism. This isn't a removal and dismissal mechanism.
Okay, now, not having been in district court all over the country, would this case be removed in the jurisdiction in which the state occurs? In other words, if it's in Georgia, would there still be a Georgia federal court hearing it? It wouldn't be removed somehow to Nova Scotia, right?
Correct.
Or Greenland.
Correct, Mr. Well, unless they're the 51st state.
Okay, so just for people that haven't, served on a lot of juries, the pool of federal juries in Georgia is the same pool, whether it's state or federal, correct?
Correct.
So the same individuals would try. The only question is, do the ladies and gentlemen on one side of the aisle don't trust federal judges, but they trust local judges who run for office versus federal judges?
Right. Correct, and have all the potential for political influence based on donations, based on political party and the like.
Okay, so really all you're doing is removing it from the political process to an apolitical process and keeping it in the same geographic area that the case is brought, but removing it to federal court.
Correct, and if you, as an accomplished lawyer yourself, Mr. Chairman, you know that the jury selection in a federal system, the defendant or the plaintiff know much more about the potential jurors, potential biases, the potential to obviously strike those jurors. You want a fair and impartial jury. You know much more about those jurors in a federal system because the system is much more structured than in a state court. State court, you show up and the jury pool's there and you're oftentimes trying to use your best judgment on who would be a fair juror. And so this, again, gives the former president, the former vice president, the option to remove if they so choose.
And isn't the former vice president still limited to this provision of the interference? In other words, it's not everything. It's based on acts related that could, a former vice president, acts relating to any act while in office. So it's not for life on former presidents, right? It's just for those for the acts while in office.
Correct.
I thank you. And thank you for yielding.